A teenage boy was walking down the street, absorbed in his phone, when suddenly two terrified girls burst out of a nearby restaurant, desperately fleeing from a menacing pursuer. In the chaos, they collide with him, sending his phone crashing to the ground. Seeing the threat, he courageously tells the girls to escape, but fear paralyzes them. Without hesitation, the boy confronts the attacker, bravely tackling him to the ground. He urges the girls to run, but they remain frozen in terror. In a tragic turn of events, he realizes he's been stabbed during the struggle. As consciousness slips away, he experiences a flood of life reflections and regrets. The two girls cradle him, their tears falling as he believes this is his final moment. Unexpectedly, he awakens in a luxurious room, a joyful maid by his bedside. She calls out, and a woman rushes in, introducing herself as his mother. The maid addresses him as Kane, leaving him bewildered and overwhelmed. His mother explains he's been in a coma for a week. Sylvia, the maid, hurries to prepare food while his mother and she briefly exit, allowing him to rest. When alone, Kane checks the mirror and is shocked to discover he's now a young child. Wondering if he's experienced reincarnation, he finds solace in remembering how he saved the girls in his previous life. Sylvia returns to feed him, amazed by his enormous appetite. Confused about his current age, Kane demands answers, his mind racing with questions about his new reality. Kane von Silford is a 3-year-old boy born into a complex family dynamic. His father, Garm, is a powerful military leader, responsible for protecting the kingdom of Esfort's borders. His mother, Sarah, is Garm's second wife. Kane has an older sister named Rain, who is 2 years his senior. The family's history includes Maria, the first wife, who has 2 sons, Jin and Alec, making Kane the 3rd son in the household. The kingdom of Esfort borders a treacherous southern forest teeming with monsters. When Kane learns about these creatures, his excitement bubbles over. Sylvie, the family's maid, reassures him that brave adventurers protect the people from these threats. Kane's imagination runs wild as he asks about magic and swords, and Sylvie confirms both are used by these heroic defenders. Eager to learn magic, Kane is initially disappointed when Sylvie explains he must first learn to read. Accepting this challenge, he embraces his new life, a fresh start, especially considering he had no connections in his previous existence. Remarkably, Kane's learning progresses at an astonishing pace. He quickly masters reading, writing, and mathematics, leaving his parents bewildered. His personality seems dramatically different since awakening from his coma, sparking curiosity and concern. Garm explains that as the 3rd son, Kane won't inherit the family estate. When asked about his future aspirations, Kane expresses a desire to study the kingdom's history and learn about magic. His father agrees, but stipulates that magic training can't begin until Kane turns 5. Ironically, Kane already possesses magical abilities, which he carefully conceals from everyone. Ryan takes on the role of Kane's mentor, teaching him about the kingdom's history and preparing him for his future. The young boy absorbs knowledge with an intensity that sets him apart from typical children his age. 2 years later, Kane is now 5 years old and ready to practice magic, but first, he must undergo his baptism. Accompanied by his parents and sister Rain, he heads to the temple for the ceremony. They explain to him that the bestow certain skill levels known as protection. The higher the protection, the greater one's status and natural talent. This protection is essential for activating magic and casting spells, and it can only be granted by a supreme. Kane learns that they worship 7 supreme. As the baptism begins, a brilliant light fills the room, and Kane's spirit is transported to the court of the supreme. There, he is greeted by Xenom, who calls him by the name from his past life, Shiina Kazuya. Rhyme, the who governs death and the cycle of rebirth, informs Kane that his previous death was unnecessary. She reveals that the crook would have stumbled before reaching the girls, and bystanders would have subdued him. Unfortunately, the crook has since been charged with murder. However, because Kane sought to do the right thing, Bela, the requested that he be reincarnated into a world of magic and fantasy. Reno, the responsible for magic, grants Kane her protection, followed by Xenom, who also bestows his protection upon him. Sarnos, of war, grants Kane his protection as well. Finally, Grim, the technology, and Panam, commerce, each grant him their protection. Bela also granted Kane her protection, meaning all Supremes had now bestowed their protection upon him. When Kane returns to his body, his parents ask him to reveal his status, but he cleverly dodges them and rushes to a corner to check privately. To his amazement, every skill he possesses is at level 10, and his overall level stands at an extraordinary level 5. Determined to keep this a secret, Kane casts a concealment spell and breathes a sigh of relief. During dinner that evening, Kane's father insists he reveal his status. Believing his magical concealment is foolproof, Kane confidently projects his status. His family erupts in shock, stunned by the unprecedented perfection of his abilities. Garm emphasizes that even the kingdom's most accomplished individuals pale in comparison to Kane's skills, especially for a 5-year-old. Garm warns Kane to keep his status hidden, explaining that revealing such extraordinary abilities could be perceived as a threat to the kingdom. He cautions that state supervision would be inevitable if authorities discovered Kane's true potential. Eager to explore his magical abilities, Kane goes outside to practice. Instead of summoning a cute, fluffy animal animal as intended, he accidentally conjures a monster. A fierce battle ensues, but Cain emerges victorious, demonstrating his remarkable combat skills. During his baptism and birthday ceremony, Cain reveals his aspiration to his father. He wants to become an adventurer. To support Cain's adventurer ambitions, his father arranges for specialized tutors. Two accomplished ladies arrive at the estate, Maestra Millie and Maestra Nina, both holding a D-rank status. They are tasked with mentoring Cain for 3 years, with Nina revealed to be an elf. Cain, displaying remarkable maturity, asks them to drop formal address and hopes for a friendly relationship. Swordsmanship training begins with Millie, who is immediately stunned by Cain's extraordinary skills. During a mock fight, Cain performs so brilliantly that Millie becomes breathless and overwhelmed. Unable to match his prowess, she quickly hands the training to Nina for magical lessons. Nina initially plans to start with basic magic training, but Cain casually demonstrates skills far beyond beginner level. He effortlessly creates water balls, fireballs, and rock bullets, leaving Nina speechless. She explains that most powerful mages spend years mastering what Cain accomplishes with seemingly no effort. The duo's astonishment reaches its peak when Cain reveals an item box, a rare skill granted by the commerce. This magical storage can hold anything without space limitations. Nina and Millie realize Cain's potential is so immense that training within the castle could risk significant destruction. They approach Garm and request permission to train Cain outside the castle grounds. Garm agrees, instructing them to stay nearby and return before sunset. For Cain, this is an exciting prospect, his first opportunity to leave the castle's confines. The trio arrives at a perfect training location. When asked to attempt intermediate-level magic, Cain instead creates a firewall so powerful it leaves a massive crater. Nina and Millie are shocked, noting that the magic should have completely exhausted him, yet Cain appears perfectly fine and unaffected. Suddenly, a killer rabbit emerges from the forest and attacks. Cain defeats the creature with ease, promptly storing its body in his item box to show his family later. Millie shares her ongoing goal of saving to purchase a magic bag, similar to an item box but with limited storage capacity. Nina demonstrates a magic search technique for detecting enemies, initially doubting Cain's ability to replicate it. To her surprise, Cain not only performs the spell but creates a more detailed enemy detection than Nina's original method. They discover 4 killer rabbits nearby, defeating 3 while one escapes into the forest. When Cain attempts to pursue the fleeing rabbit, his mentors quickly stop him. They warn him about the forest's dangerous monsters, explaining that once every decade, these creatures emerge to cause widespread chaos, a threat so significant that it necessitated building a fortified city wall. That night, Cain discovers his level has upgraded to 8 from just 1 day of training. He becomes deeply worried, realizing such extraordinary power could attract dangerous attention. He fears not only state supervision but potential elimination by those threatened by his abilities. Blaming the supreme beings for bestowing such overwhelming power, Cain is unaware that the divine entities are simply laughing at his predicament. During a guild visit, Nina and Millie encounter a C-rank bully harassing them. Without hesitation, Cain intervenes, effortlessly defeating the bully and his companions with remarkable ease. 3 years pass, and Nina and Millie's contract nears its end. They decide not to renew it, prompting Cain to consider a meaningful parting gift. Recalling Millie's long-standing desire for a magic bag, he devises an extraordinary plan. Under the cover of night, Cain ventures into the monster's forest. He confronts and defeats a blood order and a green dragon, creatures so formidable that typically multiple adventurers would struggle against a single one. The forest battle triggers the guard's alarm, believing monsters are attacking. Garm mobilizes his entire army and rushes to the forest, only to find no monsters. Discovering a massive crater from Cain's previous training and finding his son's hand towel, Garm immediately realizes Cain was responsible for the commotion. Cain collects the defeated monsters in his item box, using them to craft unique magic bags. The next day, he presents the bags to his mentors as a farewell gift. Nina and Millie are stunned to discover these bags can hold far more than standard magic bags. Cain adds a special enchantment. Only the 3 of them can touch the bags. His mentors recognize the bag's potential as a national treasure and are amazed that Cain single-handedly defeated monsters that would typically require entire adventurer teams. The duo departs, telling Cain to call them if he ever needs assistance. After defeating the dragon, Cain checks his status level and is stunned to find it has skyrocketed to over 82 million. 2 years later, Cain is now 10 years old and preparing for his noble debut in the royal capital, a mandatory ceremony for all noble sons. Traveling in a carriage with his father Garm and sister Rain, they anticipate a week-long journey, contingent on avoiding monster encounters. Proactively, Cain uses his search magic to scout for potential dangers ahead. He quickly detects a group of soldiers under monster attack, precisely locating the conflict 3 kilometers away. Garm is astonished by Cain's extraordinary long-range perception. Garm initially dispatches soldiers as backup, but Cain urgently warns that the soldiers will be dead before help arrives. Deciding to intervene personally, Cain exits the carriage and uses wind magic to transport himself at incredible speed to the battle site. Upon arrival, Cain observes the soldiers desperately protecting a carriage while fighting monsters. Utilizing his combined magic and sword skills, he systematically eliminates the monsters. With remarkable ease, he defeats the monster's general and introduces himself to the last standing knight. Offering assistance, Cain uses his healing magic to treat the knight's wounds and help the other injured soldiers. He then collects the bodies of the fallen soldiers into his item box. Garm arrives at the scene to find Cain has already neutralized the threat. When the knights open the carriage, Garm is shocked to discover they were escorting Princess Telestia and Silk, the Duke's daughter. The girls express their gratitude to Cain for saving them. Using his magic, Cain gently removes any traces of fear or trauma from the girls' minds. Immediately captivated by their savior, they insist Cain ride with them to the capital. Despite his attempts to decline, they forcefully drag him into the carriage, leaving Garm to follow behind. Inside the carriage, the girls crowd close to Cain, leaving him virtually no personal space. The knights inform them they'll soon reach the town of Renoma. Upon arrival, the girls adamantly refuse to let Cain leave, demanding he stay in the same room. Cain agrees only on the condition that the room is spacious, to which the girls quickly concur. In their shared room, the girls continuously shift their beds closer to Cain, positioning him in the middle. Increasingly anxious, Cain struggles to sleep. This pattern continues for the entire journey to the capital. At the palace, Daim von Gazard, the vice-captain of the Royal Chivalric Order, welcomes Cain. He thanks Cain for protecting the girls and returning the bodies of the fallen knights. Just as Cain prepares to leave, Daim informs him that the king has requested his presence. Cain enters the royal palace, finding himself surrounded by nobles, and is about to meet the king. The king expresses profound gratitude to Cain for saving his daughter Telestia and the duke's daughter Silk, as well as for honoring the fallen knights. The nobles are left in awe upon hearing how Cain single-handedly defeated an army of ogres. As a reward, the king bestows upon Cain the title of Baron. He is to receive 10 platinum coins and a mansion of his own. When one of the nobles, Corgino, attempts to object to the decision, the king swiftly silences him. Later, the king invites Cain to his private parlor, accompanied by Silk's father, Eric von Santana. They reiterate their thanks and inform Cain that he will receive the standard baron's pay and have his mansion maintained. Unexpectedly, the king then declares that Cain will be engaged to both Telestia and Silk. Confused, Cain asks for an explanation. The king bluntly states that because Cain shared a room with the unmarried girls, no other potential suitors would now consider them. The implication is clear. To preserve the girls' honor and reputation, Cain must marry them. Trapped by the social and political implications, Cain has no choice but to accept the engagement. Cain visits the realm to discuss his concerns. He complains about his extraordinarily high status and performance that far exceeds normal human capabilities. The beings propose an intriguing offer, becoming a with the caveat that certain limits must not be crossed. Cain contemplates the offer but refrains from giving an immediate response. Expressing their perpetual boredom, the supreme beings request entertainment. Cain promises to think of something inventive to alleviate their monotony. Later, while accompanying his sister to a clothing store, Cain grows restless and ventures outside. There, he encounters his longtime friend Parma, who reveals she's in the capital to train with her uncle, Tamanus. Upon learning Cain is now a noble, Tamanus becomes notably more respectful. Curious about Tamanus' work, Cain visits his shop and requests the creation of a recreational item. He provides detailed specifications, and Tamanus confirms he can produce it. Cain generously offers a gold coin, suggesting it as an investment in the future. Tamanus' company, Sarah Cain, commits fully to the project. Returning home, Cain finds his sister Rain upset that he didn't inspect her clothing purchases earlier. She insists he examine all the items once they're home. Shortly after, Tamanus summons Cain to announce the completion of the requested item. Cain inspects the recreational item and is thoroughly impressed with Tamanus' craftsmanship. He names the game Reversi and demonstrates its gameplay to Tamanus, who is amazed by its potential. Tamanus predicts the game will be immensely popular and sell exceptionally well. Cain strategically instructs Tamanus to create 2 versions of Reversi, an affordable edition for common citizens and a luxurious, expensive version for nobles. When Tamanus expresses concerns about production funds, Cain promptly provides additional gold coins to support the venture. Tamanus suggests drawing up a contract and presenting it to the Supreme Being of Commerce, which would grant them exclusive production rights for 3 years. Cain agrees, and the contract is sworn and submitted. Meanwhile, themselves begin enjoying the Reversi game. At the debut ceremony, Silk's father approaches Cain to express gratitude once again for saving his daughter. Corgino and his son are also in attendance. When Cain meets the king, he presents him with an elaborate version of Reversi. The king accepts the gift and indicates they need to discuss matters after the ceremony. Garm is surprised, having been unaware of Cain's game development. Cain explains he created Reversi as a means to generate income for maintaining his newly acquired mansion. Shortly after the ceremony, Silk approaches Cain while Telestia remains occupied with the king. As they converse, Silk becomes increasingly captivated by Kane. Suddenly, Habit, Corgino's son, and his friends arrive, attempting to bully Kane. Believing him to be of low status, they begin harassing him. Silk becomes visibly upset. When Kane asks them to apologize, they instead challenge him to settle their dispute outside. Outdoors, Habit and his friends unleash their magic against Kane, but their attacks are pathetically weak and fail to affect him. Exasperated, Silk intervenes, publicly declaring Kane's status as a baron and the son of Margrave Garm. Immediately humiliated, the group apologizes and quickly retreats. In the aftermath, Silk boldly asks Kane to go on a date with her. Telestia promptly appears, insisting she too wants a date with Kane. Kane agrees to date both of them. Just then, the king arrives, demanding a private, man-to-man conversation with Kane. Kane receives the key and map to his new mansion. Before leaving the palace, every noble and high-ranking official eagerly plays reversi with him. Arriving at his new property, Kane discovers a rundown, dilapidated mansion. The building appears old, tattered, and extremely dirty. Undeterred, Kane uses his cleaning and repair magic to transform the entire space. Instantly, everything becomes clean, new, and sparkling. Sylvia arrives shortly after with a group of maids to assist Kane. He is also introduced to his new butler, Colin. Sylvia promises to work diligently and make Kane's life comfortable. When Kane mentions he has already cleaned everything with magic, Colin informs him that his brothers are returning home and he should be present to welcome them. Kane returns to his father's mansion to greet his brothers. They express surprise that Kane has received a mansion before them. Rhine expresses her desire to stay with Kane, while his brothers tease her about the supposedly rundown building. Upon arriving at Kane's mansion, Rhine and Kane's parents are astonished by the remarkable transformation. Kane admits to using magic to restore the property. His family meticulously inspects the house, expressing their impressed admiration. However, Kane's father raises one observation: the mansion lacks artwork. Following his father's advice about artwork, Kane decorates the living room by mounting the body of the red dragon he previously defeated. Garm is stunned, immediately recognizing it as a Calamity-class dragon. He explains that such a dragon would typically require a large group of adventurers to defeat, likely resulting in significant casualties. Garm emphasizes that a mounted red dragon could be worth thousands of platinum coins. The family explores Kane's new mansion, particularly marveling at the advanced toilet technology that shoots water after use. Garm is so impressed that he asks Kane to install a similar toilet in his own mansion. Garm then reminds Kane of the noble tradition, hosting a debut party to officially open his new mansion. Colin provides Kane with the guest list, which includes Corgino. When Kane inquires why the king isn't on the list, Colin explains that only high-ranking nobles have the privilege of directly inviting the king. Preparing for the party, Kane begins creating hospitality items. He crafts an exquisite, clean wine cup and prepares fizzy wine and hamburger steak. Sylvia tastes the preparations and confirms they are excellent. Shortly after these preparations, the king summons Kane to the palace. The king scolds Kane for not inviting him to the party. Kane quickly apologizes and fabricates an excuse, claiming he intended to invite the king personally. Fortunately, Colin had previously provided Kane with an invitation card, which serves as his saving grace. Kane begins welcoming numerous guests to his debut party. They sample the wine and hamburger steak, and are completely amazed by the exceptional quality. Guests also marvel at the mounted red dragon displayed in his home. The king arrives unexpectedly, surprising the attendees. After tasting the food and wine, he too is thoroughly impressed. He tries the toilet and immediately demands that Kane create similar facilities for the palace. The king is so delighted that he offers Kane the ultimate hospitality compliment. Corgino arrives and begins behaving antagonistically. He tastes the delicacies and falsely claims they are terrible. He then demands that Kane give him the recipe and numerous wine cups. Kane politely but firmly refuses. Corgino escalates to threatening Kane, unaware that the king is present. The king immediately intervenes, scolding Corgino for failing to uphold the standards expected of a noble. Thoroughly humiliated, Corgino apologizes and hastily departs. Kane meets with Dame to arrange storage for his monster materials, mentioning that Prime Minister Magna has already given permission. Initially, Dame shows Kane a room, but Kane declares it insufficient. When Kane casually mentions defeating multiple dragons, Dame is left in awe. Dame then takes Kane to the palace yard. Kane releases all the monster materials from his item box, leaving Dame completely dumbfounded. Dame even asks if Kane is a child of the supreme beings, which Kane denies. After thanking Dame, Kane prepares to leave. However, Dame stops him, requesting his help with knights training. Dame introduces Kane to the knights, recounting his remarkable feats. When Kane inquires about the captain's whereabouts, Dame mentions the captain will arrive soon. One of the knights challenges Kane to a mock battle, which Kane wins effortlessly. Dame then suggests Kane fight all the knights simultaneously. As the knights surround Kane, ready to attack, a voice suddenly interrupts. An elf woman jumps down, stopping the impending battle. Kane is surprised when Dime addresses her as the captain. Dime explains Kane's achievements to her, and the captain challenges Kane to a duel. Kane accepts the challenge. Despite the captain being renowned as the kingdom's best swordsman and knight, Kane defeats her, winning the duel decisively. After their duel, the captain becomes overwhelmed and declares that Kane must marry her. She introduces herself as Tijuana von Liebert, an an elf who explains that her slow aging process means the age difference shouldn't be a concern. Tijuana announces her intention to speak with the king about her desire to marry Cain. Cain becomes anxious, remembering his existing engagements to Celestia and Silk. In the king's presence, Tijuana openly expresses her heart's desire. The king is stunned by her declaration. He explains Tijuana's significance, detailing that the elf state is a self-governed nation under the Esfort kingdom, effectively making her a princess. The king recounts how their first king, Yuya Hirasawa, originally brought the elf kingdom under their protection. When the king mentions Cain's existing engagements to Celestia and Silk, hoping to discourage Tijuana, she becomes even more excited. The king ultimately advises Tijuana to first obtain her father's permission before making any final decisions. After Cain and Tijuana's departure, the king, his officials, and Garm are left pondering Cain's extraordinary power. They collectively decide to test whether Cain might be connected to the Their plan involves presenting Cain with a book of spells to assess his capabilities. Cain is invited to the king's room and presented with a book. Upon examining it, Cain not only admires the book but is able to read it, which leaves the king and his officials stunned. The book contains emperor-level magic, and Cain quickly realizes it is written in Japanese. With a serious tone, the king demands Cain reveal the truth about his identity. Cornered, Cain comes clean. He explains that he was reincarnated into this world but remains Garm's biological son. He apologizes for not disclosing this information to his father earlier. The king reveals that the book was written by the first king, Yuya Hirasawa. Cain then deduces that Hirasawa was also a reincarnated individual from Japan. Cain proceeds to share detailed information about Japan with everyone in the room. When the king asks to see Cain's status, he declares that Cain should be the king. However, Cain firmly disagrees, stating he is content with his current life. He pleads with the king not to alter his existing treatment. Tijuana suddenly bursts into the room, brandishing a letter of permission from her father. She announces her father's approval of her marriage to Cain, and promptly drags Cain away for additional duels and training. Before everyone disperses, the king warns those present to maintain absolute secrecy about what they have just heard and witnessed. Privately, the king contemplates how valuable Cain would be in protecting the kingdom from future dangers. After learning that the first king of the kingdom, Yuya Hirasawa Esfort, came from Japan and authored the emperor's magic book, Cain begins studying the text. The book reveals Yuya's origin story. He was involved in an accident in Japan and believed he had died, only to be summoned into this fantasy world instead. Cain realizes Yuya's situation differs from his own reincarnation. Yuya was summoned rather than reborn. While Cain is absorbing the book's contents, Celestia and Silk interrupt him. He quickly closes the book, preventing them from seeing its contents, knowing they cannot read Japanese. When they ask what he's studying, Cain swiftly convinces them he's preparing for an upcoming entrance examination. Celestia and Silk express their desire to study together, but Cain becomes frustrated and tells them he is busy. They suggest hanging out tomorrow, but Cain claims his schedule is tight. Managing to escape the persistent duo, he rushes outside, hoping for a moment of peace. His relief is short-lived. Tijuana appears and announces a mock battle outside the capital tomorrow, insisting Cain join her. Once again, Cain claims to have prior commitments and runs away. At 12 years old, Cain becomes eligible to register as an adventurer. He arrives at the royal capital's Adventurer Guild, immediately impressed by the building's beautiful structure and setting. While admiring his surroundings, Cain accidentally bumps into a red-haired man. The man inquires about Cain's purpose at the guild. When Cain excitedly explains he's there to register as an adventurer, the man warns him not to do anything crazy, and then departs. At the reception, a young lady greets Cain and provides him with a registration form. Deliberately, Cain writes only his first name, omitting his barren title. His intention is to receive a normal, unbiased reception from those around him. After completing the form, Cain is instructed to place a drop of blood on a crystal that measures magical capacity. Following this, the receptionist presents him with a G-rank adventurer card. Cain recalls that his former tutors, Millie and Nina, were rated as D-rank adventurers. The receptionist offers Cain the opportunity to ask questions. When Cain politely addresses her as "ma'am," she quickly corrects him and introduces herself as Ratia. She wishes him luck. Suddenly, a guild member and his minions approach Ratia, beginning to harass her. Cain intervenes, telling the men to leave Ratia alone. Angered by Cain's interference, the bully attempts to kick him, but Cain swiftly dodges the attack. When the bully's minions also try to attack, they fail to lay a hand on Cain. Frustrated, the bully prepares to draw his sword. Cain warns him not to proceed. At that moment, the red-haired man from earlier appears, commanding the bullies to leave immediately. Recognizing him as Claude from the Ice Flame Party, the bullies become frightened and quickly flee. Cain and Ratia thank Claude for his help. Claude, however, also praises Cain's impressive evasive abilities and invites him for a drink. At the establishment, Claude orders alcohol for himself but provides Cain with fruit juice. Curious about Cain's combat skills, Claude asks about his evasive abilities. Cain explains that he has had skilled tutors and has been training since he was very young. Cain then inquires about the Ice Flame Party. Claude explains that the party's name comes from his wife's ice magic and his own flaming sword technique. Impressed by this unique combination, Claude advises Cain to find a trustworthy party to work with in the future. Claude explains that having a party helps adventurers take on more challenging quests. He shows Kane his adventurer card, revealing he is A rank. Claude shares an interesting detail that only the king holds an SSS rank due to his exceptional efficiency during his prime. While they discuss the SSS rank, Claude's wife Lena suddenly appears and hits Claude on the head. She explains she's been searching for him and finds him drinking alcohol. Kane intervenes, telling Lena about Claude saving him from bullies earlier. Lena finds Kane adorable but mentions that she and Claude have a quest to complete. She drags Claude out by his ears, with Claude managing to advise Kane to find a good quest before leaving. Kane approaches the quest board and discovers that G-rank quests primarily involve mundane tasks like cleaning stables and assisting nobles. Disappointed, he wants a quest that involves fighting and defeating monsters. His excitement peaks when he spots a quest to kill goblins in the East Forest. Without hesitation, he accepts the quest and leaves the guild. Outside, Tijuana and her vice captain appear to remind Kane about the training outside the capital. Kane explains he just registered as an adventurer and is heading to his first quest. Upon hearing this, Tijuana declares she will join her fiancé on the quest. Her vice captain attempts to remind her about the training, but she dismissively puts Dime in charge and leaves with Kane. Arriving at the East Forest, Tijuana is overjoyed to be out with her fiancé. She enthusiastically displays her affection towards Kane, dragging him along. Using his search skill, Kane detects the goblin's location. They discover a fallen cart and spot goblins surrounding a merchant. Without hesitation, Tijuana and Kane leap into action to rescue the merchant. While Tijuana engages the monsters, Kane uses his healing skill to revive the injured man. He also supports Tijuana by infusing her with additional magic to enhance her fighting capabilities. As Tijuana battles the monsters, she daydreams about her future life with Kane. Facing the goblin general alone, she dramatically splits the creature in half, likening the strike to cutting a wedding cake. Celebrating their successful first quest, Kane and Tijuana are interrupted when a pack of green lizards emerges from the forest. Kane instructs Tijuana to evacuate the merchant while he handles the lizards. He creates a powerful spell by summoning a light ball and infusing it with an ice pillar, effectively defeating the lizard pack. Later, Nina and Millie arrive at the battle site. They find a massive crater and are surprised by the complete absence of green lizard activity. Having accepted a D-rank quest to handle the lizards, they conclude there's nothing left to do and leave the scene. Kane returns to the guild and approaches Ratia, inquiring about the green lizards he defeated. Ratia explains that green lizard quests are typically D-rank, but a large group would qualify as a C-rank quest. When Kane mentions he defeated approximately 30 green lizards, Ratia is stunned and immediately rushes to inform one of the guild's chiefs. The chief, Cedric, invites Kane to the meeting room. He explains that the guild master is occupied with a visitor, so he will handle Kane's case. Cedric asks about the origin of the lizards, and Kane honestly states that he defeated them himself. Cedric becomes angry, accusing Kane of attempting to swindle the guild. When Kane tries to explain, Cedric dismisses him, claiming Kane is just an ordinary commoner. Ratia attempts to intervene, warning Cedric about abusing his authority, but he refuses to listen. The chief continues to accuse Kane of making a mockery of the guild. Ratia defends Kane, insisting Cedric should not make accusations without proof. Enraged, Cedric declares he is revoking Kane's guild membership. This comes as a shock to Kane, who had just registered as an adventurer that very day. The guildmaster enters, inquiring about the commotion. Cedric explains that Kane is lying about defeating 30 green lizards, especially since he just registered that day. The guildmaster laughs, telling Cedric he has much to learn. Suddenly, the guildmaster calls someone to enter. Tijuana bursts through the door, rushing to hug Kane and calling him her husband. This leaves Cedric and Ratia bewildered. The guildmaster reveals Kane's true identity, the young baron who saved Telestia and Silk, and the son of Margrave Garm. When Cedric argues that Kane's registration didn't mention his title, Kane explains he intentionally omitted it to avoid special treatment. Adding to Cedric's dismay, Tijuana is revealed to be the guildmaster's sister. This means Kane will become the guildmaster's brother-in-law upon marriage. Realizing the gravity of his mistake, Cedric falls to his knees, begging for forgiveness, knowing that insulting a noble is punishable by death. Kane graciously forgives Cedric, advising him to avoid making unfounded assumptions in the future. The guildmaster then confirms the guild will accept Kane's green lizard quest, instructing Ratia to prepare the warehouse. As an apology, the guildmaster initially considers raising Kane to C rank. However, Tijuana reminds him that Kane is the strongest in the kingdom. Consequently, the guildmaster decides to promote Kane directly to A rank. Ratia and Cedric are shocked that Kane achieved A rank status on his very first day. The promotion comes with one condition: Kane must first subjugate some bandits. But given Kane's capabilities, this task is hardly a challenge. After Cedric and Ratia's departure, the guildmaster reveals to Kane that he now understands why his sister fell in love with him. Kane sighs with relief, realizing the guildmaster is an understanding brother. Meanwhile, are monitoring Kane's activities. One questions the decision to make Kane so powerful. The explains that Kane needs to be even stronger because Aaron's seal will soon be broken. Aaron, who was sealed away 300 years ago, poses an existential threat. His return would mean the end of the world. decides to reach out to an unknown man who will serve as Kane's master. This individual will train Kane and ensure he is prepared for Aaron's potential return. Sylvie bursts into Kane's room, urgently waking him to prevent him from being late for the entrance examination. Kane assures her he won't be late, but Sylvie's panic mode intensifies, forcing Kane to get up immediately. After finishing breakfast, Sylvie accompanies Kane to the castle gate, anxiously praying he won't be late. Once Sylvie turns back and can no longer see him, Kane uses his magic to teleport directly to the exam venue. At the reception, Kane checks in and receives his examination details. The receptionist informs him that he is number 285 and is assigned to seat number 10 in classroom A. Reviewing the participant list, Kane notices an unusual absence. None of the children he met at the debut party are present. Kane enters the classroom and settles into his assigned seat. The instructor arrives and immediately warns the students that anyone caught cheating will be immediately expelled. The exam will last 2 hours, and the time begins immediately. Kane reviews the exam questions and realizes how fortunate he is. Thanks to the knowledge from his past life, reading, writing, and arithmetic come easily to him. He knows that nobles are expected to excel at history questions, which further works to his advantage. Completing the exam in just 30 minutes, Kane finishes well ahead of his peers. The instructor, skeptical of his rapid completion, assumes he must have written nonsense. When the 2-hour time limit expires, the instructor calls for students to stop writing. Following the written exam, the instructor announces they will now be assessed on their magical abilities. This excites Kane. They move to a yard where the instructor instructs students to choose a target and hit it with their strongest spell. Kane asks if he can use his full power. The instructor confidently permits this, assuring him that a defensive barrier can withstand any spell. She believes the barrier will protect the testing area. As other students demonstrate their magical abilities, Kane finds their spells disappointingly weak. When his turn comes, he initially considers using Inferno but decides it would be too dangerous. Instead, he opts for a beginner-level magic spell. Kane summons a fireball bullet that turns blue upon creation. The instructor is shocked both by the spell's appearance and its execution. To everyone's astonishment, the fireball pierces through the supposedly impenetrable barrier, destroying everything in its path for kilometers. Kane confronts the instructor, reminding her that she explicitly told him he could use his full power because of the barrier. The instructor is bewildered, insisting that no beginner-level magic should have penetrated the barrier. She rushes outside to verify that no one was harmed in the surrounding area. After her inspection, she instructs the students to proceed to the swordsmanship assessment. Upon arrival, she explains that A-rank adventurers have been enlisted to evaluate the students' sword skills. Kane spots Claude among the adventurers, and Claude is equally surprised to see him. Kane explains that he is now 12 and taking the entrance exam. Claude decides to personally assess Kane's swordsmanship and chooses him as his opponent. Initially, Kane hesitates, but the instructor insists he cannot reject Claude's request. The duel begins, with Kane acknowledging that he must give his best effort against an A-rank adventurer. Kane attacks Claude, but to his surprise, Claude matches him blow for blow. They continue their intense sparring until the instructor decides he has seen enough. He tells Kane to leave and return later to check the exam results. Kane returns home, greeted by Sylvie and Colin. Sylvie, anticipating his hunger, promises to prepare an abundant meal. The next day, Kane appears before the king, who immediately scolds him for destroying the training area. Kane defends himself, explaining that the instructor told him to use his full power, believing the barrier would protect the area. He emphasizes that he didn't even use intermediate-level magic, let alone Emperor-level magic. The king is taken aback by the mention of Emperor-level magic. When Kane offers to demonstrate, the king quickly refuses. Curious about the exam, the king asks why Telestia and Silk didn't see him. Kane reveals he checked in through the south entrance and took the exam in the assigned room. The king points out the existence of the north entrance, which Kane acknowledges. Kane explains that the south entrance is for commoners, while the north is for nobles. Suddenly, he realizes his mistake. He had taken the exam with commoners. Silk's father informs Kane that the school's headmaster complained about a commoner scoring exceptionally high. Duke Eric already suspects Kane is the person in question. The repair bills, sent to the Prime Minister, are exorbitantly high, leaving Kane surprised. The king apologizes and tells Kane that the exam results are out, instructing him to go and check. Kane arrives at the results venue and discovers he has topped the class. Telestia and Silk are also present, with Telestia ranking second and Silk third. Silk playfully tells Kane to look forward to seeing her in the new school uniform. At the reception, Kane spots his sister Rain, who is guiding students. She sees him and rushes to give him a warm hug. Rain expresses how much she has missed him, noting that he rarely visits their father's castle anymore. She also informs Kane that, as the top student, he will deliver the admission ceremony speech, a tradition for top students. Returning home, Kane shares the good news with Sylvie, who is overjoyed. On the day of the ceremony, Kane enters the hall to find his parents have also come to see his speech. Both Kane and the other students are dressed in beautiful school uniforms. Kane compliments against Telestia and Silk, causing the duo to blush. The headmaster welcomes everyone and invites Kane to the stage. Kane begins his speech by expressing his pleasure in addressing the audience. He candidly shares his story of mistakenly entering through the wrong school entrance during the examination, yet receiving the same treatment as other students. He commends the school for its lack of discrimination between nobles and commoners, invoking the first king Yuya's belief in equality. Kane emphasizes that this principle should be a guiding light for everyone. After Kane's speech, he is informed that the king is present and wishes to address the crowd. The king takes the stage, delivering a speech that seems to be indirectly speaking directly to Kane. Kane returns to class, welcomed by Telestia and Silk. Their teacher, Elka von Portley, enters and announces that students must choose their future paths. Kane is initially excited about becoming an adventurer, but Telestia reminds him that as a land-owned noble, he needs to focus on learning about nobility. Feeling disappointed, Kane begins to sulk. Silk, however, encourages him by pointing out that he can choose multiple courses. Ultimately, Kane decides to pursue 4 paths: nobility, adventuring, magic, and magic items. Telestia chooses internal affairs, hoping to help Kane manage his future affairs. Silk opts for commerce, with the same intention of supporting Kane. Leaving the class, Kane encounters a group of nobles bullying a cat-like girl. To his surprise, he recognizes her as his friend Parma. Kane intervenes, asserting that both commoners and nobles should be treated equally in the school. The 3 nobles initially continue their harassment but quickly become intimidated when they realize Kane is the one confronting them. Kane firmly states that Parma is his friend and should not be mistreated. One of the nobles threatens to tell the Duke, implying that Parma's family will be ruined by their intervention. Silk and Telestia arrive at the scene, causing the 3 bullies to immediately humble themselves. They apologize to Parma and quickly depart. Parma expresses her happiness about attending the same school as Kane, but feels disappointed that she isn't in his class. Telestia and Silk ask Kane to give them privacy to speak with Parma. Curious, Kane wonders about their private conversation. Suddenly, a voice speaks directly in Kane's mind, instructing him to come to the library because someone is waiting for him. Kane follows the mysterious directive and arrives at the library. Upon opening the door, he is unexpectedly transported to another location. He finds himself in an unfamiliar building and notices a man preparing coffee. The man casually asks Kane if he would like sugar in his coffee. Kane is surprised to discover that coffee exists in this world. As Kane sits there, he remains puzzled about the identity of this mysterious individual. The unknown man reveals that he has been waiting for Kane. Based on the context and hints, it appears this mysterious figure is likely Yuya, the first king of the kingdom. After opening the library door, Kane finds himself in an apartment. He enters and meets a man preparing coffee. The man reveals that he has been waiting for Kane, addressing him by his previous name, Shiina Kazuya from Japan. The man assures Kane there's no need to be cautious, explaining that the including Xenom, have informed him about everything concerning Kane. He then introduces himself as Yuya Terahirasawa Esfort, the first king of Esfort. Kane is stunned to see Yuya alive. Attempting to verify Yuya's existence, he tries to determine if Yuya is a ghost. Yuya confirms he is completely real, and suggests Kane use his judgment skills to assess his status. When Kane checks, he's astonished to discover that Yuya is now a Yuya explains that the world he created is Fabnail, which is their current location. Remarkably, even after 300 years, Yuya hasn't aged a day. After their initial introduction, Yuya informs Kane that Xenom and the other Supreme Beings have tasked him with training Kane. Kane, feeling confident in his abilities, doubts he needs any training. To demonstrate Kane's limitations, Yuya holds out a cookie and challenges Kane to take it. When Kane attempts to collect the cookie, Yuya effortlessly blocks him with a sword. Yuya bluntly tells Kane that he is not strong enough and has a long way to go. Humbled, Kane asks why he needs to become stronger. Yuya cryptically responds that there is someone Kane needs to fight. Intrigued, Kane asks who this opponent might be. Yuya explains how an evil Supreme Eren used the Oracle to manipulate humans into killing each other. Although Yuya and his companions had previously sealed Eren away, the seal is gradually breaking apart. When Kane suggests simply resealing Eren, Yuya reveals that as a Supreme he can no longer directly interfere in human affairs. He hints that Kane's previous life is somehow connected to the task ahead. Intrigued by Yuya's cryptic statement, Kane seeks clarification. Instead, Yuya transports them to a forest. He provides Kane with a sword and declares himself Kane's teacher. Yuya offers to reveal more information if Kane completes his assigned task. Yuya gives Kane a compass, instructing him to follow its direction back to their previous location. He explains that Kane is currently on level 300 and needs to reach at least level 600. Warning that the task might take considerable time, Yuya reassures Kane by explaining that a year in this world equals just a day in S4. After wishing Kane good luck, Yuya departs. Kane begins traversing the forest, systematically cutting down beasts and monsters in his path. Back in Esfort, Sylvia enters Kane's room but finds it empty. Telestia and Silk arrive at Kane's mansion, and Sylvia informs them that Kane hasn't returned home. Confused and worried, they begin to panic, speculating about potential kidnapping or misfortune. Telestia manages to calm the situation, suggesting they simply wait at home. She confidently asserts that Kane will return eventually. In Fabniel, Kane is exhausted after months of continuous battling. His magic is depleted, and he's weary from fighting countless monsters without rest. Believing he might never escape the forest, he collapses in fatigue. A faint scream catches his attention. Mustering his remaining strength, Kane investigates and discovers a wounded Fenrir fighting for survival. Initially, he considers ending the Fenrir's suffering, but then remembers his sworn oath to protect the weak. Using his last reserves of magic, Kane heals the Fenrir and subsequently loses consciousness. While Kane sleeps, a group of monsters attempts to attack him. He awakens to find the Fenrir defending him, single-handedly defeating 3 monsters. Grateful, Kane embraces the Fenrir, who saved his life. Seeing the Fenrir is alone, Kane decides to adopt him. He names the creature Haku. This companionship reignites Kane's focus and strength, renewing his resolve to protect those he loves. Together, they continue battling monsters through the forest. Finally, Kane reaches the apartment. Yuya welcomes him and notices his new companion. When Kane asks how long he's been gone, Yuya reveals it's been 4 years. Yuya explains that Fenrirs are holy beasts, and that forming a contract with Haku will ensure the creature's loyalty. Kane forms the contract, and Haku momentarily disappears. Startled, Kane is reassured by Yuya that he can summon Haku whenever needed. Yuya announces that Kane will now train under a new teacher. A man named Durain is introduced. Kane reminds Yuya of his promise to explain Eren and his connection to Kane's past life. Yuya agrees to reveal everything before Kane returns to Esfort. Kane begins his training with Durain, attacking vigorously. However, Durain effortlessly knocks Kane out with a single punch, declaring that Kane is not yet strong enough. Kane awakens in an unfamiliar apartment. Descending the stairs, Kane encounters Durain and a woman. Durain introduces her as his wife, Ruri. Ruri explains that Durain brought Kane home after yesterday's training. She offers to prepare food for him and asks for some time to cook. Kane discovers a baby dragon in the house and becomes fascinated. As he plays with the dragon, Haku grows jealous. The two creatures exchange menacing stares until Ruri intervenes, telling them to stop. Once the meal is ready, Kane eats hurriedly, remarking how long it's been since he's had such a delicious and nourishing meal. Ruri informs him that he'll be living with them from now on, promising many more delightful meals. Back in Esfort, Sylvia is teaching Telestia and Silk household skills, including cooking and various chores. Despite their worry about Kane's absence, Telestia reassures them that knights are searching for him. Sylvia remains strict with the duo, who diligently complete their tasks, motivated by the hope of pleasing Kane for their future marriages. Kane continues his intense training with Durain. As time progresses, Durain acknowledges Kane's growing strength, noting that Kane can now walk home independently after their training sessions. A year later, Kane remains dedicated to his training. Yuya reveals the backstory of Eren, who was previously the of amusement and the 8th among Xenom and others. The absence of games and amusement in Esfort stems from Eren's banishment. Eren had used an oracle to force innocent people across the kingdom into a deadly game. His actions led to his exile from the realm of Yuya warns that if Eren returns, he will restart this deadly game, forcing everyone to participate. To prevent this, Kane must become stronger. During one of their training sessions, Yuya discloses the connection between Eren and Kane's past life. He admits his failure to protect his friends, who were actually Kane's parents. Had recruited Kane's parents to help defeat Eren. Themselves could not directly interfere. In the battle against Eren, Kane's mother was killed. His father managed to restrain Eren, allowing Yuya to seal him away, but at the cost of his own life. The revelation connects Kane deeply to this ongoing conflict, explaining why his training and preparation are so crucial. Yuya reveals that Kane's parents were his personal friends. Hearing this, Kane becomes motivated to grow stronger to protect those he loves. He attacks Durain with full force, breaking Durain's sword. Recognizing Kane's growth, Durain concedes defeat and acknowledges that Kane has become stronger. Durain announces the completion of Kane's training. Kane visits his parents' grave located behind Yuya's mansion, finally understanding that his parents had come to Esfort from Japan. Yuya shares that his parents were thinking of Kane even as they faced their final moments. Touched, Kane thanks Yuya for everything he did for his parents. Yuya repeats his earlier challenge, holding out a cookie. This time, Kane successfully takes the cookie, proving his newfound strength. Yuya suggests they share coffee, but Kane is eager to return to Esfort. Having spent 5 years in Fabniel, Kane has grown taller and older. Yuya uses magic to restore Kane to his original appearance when he first arrived. Kane names the baby dragon Jin and forms a contract contract with him, joining Haku as his companion. Before leaving, Yuya presents Kane with a sword to deliver to the king. Kane returns to his mansion, where his friends are overjoyed to see him. Telestia and Silk present him with specially made cookies. Kane eats them with happiness, his smile radiating joy. The entire family welcomes him home, and Kane expresses his gratitude with tears in his eyes. Kane visits the palace and recounts his adventure with the first king, Yuya. The king is astonished, especially when Kane presents the katana Yuya sent specifically for him. The king finds it hard to believe that Kane spent 5 years training with Yuya, unaware of the different time dynamics in Yuya's world. After their discussion, Kane learns that the guild is threatening to withdraw his A-rank classification. He has not completed the required task that would solidify his A-rank status. Promptly, Kane visits the guild. Tijuana's brother comments on Kane's absence, to which Kane explains he was away. The guildmaster mentions that Tijuana has missed him greatly and reminds Kane of the pending task, subjugating a group of bandits. Given Kane's reputation as the strongest man in the kingdom, they consider it an easy assignment. Kane is briefed on the bandits' location and promises to address the task immediately. Traveling to the Gracia Road leading to the capital, Kane uses a flying spell for reconnaissance. He soon discovers bandits harassing a man and 2 women. Without hesitation, Kane intervenes. To his surprise, the 2 women are his former instructors, Millie and Nina. The man being harassed is Sabinos. Noticing Nina is injured, Kane quickly applies his healing magic to help her. The bandits begin to mock Kane, telling him to go back to his mother and act like a baby. His former instructors, Millie and Nina, warn Kane about the large number of bandits. Kane laughs off their concern and swiftly knocks out the bandits in moments. After defeating them, he casually mentions that he was holding back. Millie and Nina are stunned by his effortless display of power. Kane explains that he's completing a task and reveals his A-rank status. His masters are shocked, unable to believe he skipped both C and B ranks to achieve A rank. When they ask how this happened, Kane hints that he accomplished something incredible to earn the promotion. Kane gathers the bandits and takes them to town for processing. Upon dropping Sabinos off at his home, Parma emerges to thank Kane. They learn that Kane has been promoted to Baron. Nina suggests she should now address Kane formally, but he insists there's no need. Returning to the guild to report the completed task, Kane's presence immediately intimidates previous bullies who were harassing Millie and Nina. Claude and Lena arrive at the guild, and Claude is surprised to see Millie with Kane. Upon learning that Millie and Nina were Kane's masters, Claude reveals that Millie is his sister. Excited by the revelation, Claude immediately calls for a celebration with wine. His wife promptly hits him on the head, commenting on his constant search for drinking opportunities. Lena doesn't object to the drinking, and the group sits down together. Millie recounts how they were escorting Sabinos when bandits attacked, nearly overpowering them before Kane's arrival. She dramatically imitates Kane's bandit-defeating moves with exaggerated wham-wham sounds. Claude learns about Kane's A-rank status and is taken aback. However, he quickly understands given Kane's strength. He shares how Kane matched his swordsmanship skills during training, even more impressively without using magical abilities. Millie shouts in disbelief that Kane could match her brother's skill at such a young age. Claude is further shocked to hear Kane is now a baron. Like others before him, he considers addressing Kane formally, but Kane insists there's no need. Millie and Nina show Kane the magic bag he made for them as a parting gift. They reveal the bag has never been full since they started using it. Lena becomes jealous upon learning it's a national treasure level item and begs Kane to make her one. Kane agrees, noting Lena is already visibly drunk. Claude mentions that Lena gets intoxicated very easily, but assures Kane she won't remember anything the next day. This reminds Kane that he has school tomorrow. Claude is puzzled why a baron would need to attend school, but Kane explains there are still many things he needs to learn. Kane quickly says goodbye and hurries off. After Kane leaves, Claude expresses concern about Kane's challenges at school and wishes they could help him. Coincidentally, Ratia approaches their table to inform Claude that the school needs a substitute instructor for an adventurer class, as the main instructor is currently unavailable. Claude sees this as an opportunity to support Kane. The next day at school, Kane's class is taken to the training ground for magic lessons. The instructor tells students to use all their magical abilities to hit a target. Before the lesson begins, she informs Kane that he is exempted from the exercise. She explains that his beginner-level magic is so powerful that even the protective barrier cannot withstand it. The headmaster has already instructed her to automatically pass Kane in the course. Claude, Millie, Lena, and Nina observe this from a distance, realizing that Kane is isolated at school due to his exceptional abilities. During the swordsmanship lesson, the instructor announces that the guild has sent adventurers to assist with the day's class. Typically, they would receive a C-rank adventurer, but an exception has been made. Instead, A and B-rank adventurers have been dispatched. Claude, Lena, Millie, and Nina enter the classroom. Claude is both surprised and delighted. This revelation also confirms that Millie and Nina have now achieved B-rank adventurer status. Claude addresses the class, asking how many students are registered adventurers. All students raise their hands. He then requests they bring out their guild cards. Kane becomes anxious, fearing the students' reaction if they discover his A-rank status. The students produce their cards, revealing they are all F ranks. When it's Kane's turn, he claims he has forgotten his card at home. Claude playfully scolds him, emphasizing that a guild card represents an adventurer's identity. After After addressing the class, Claude instructs them to move outside for mock battles. The students are excited to learn from high-ranked adventurers, their enthusiasm palpable. Kane sees this as an opportunity to subtly demonstrate his capabilities. Claude initially keeps Kane out of the first practice rounds. When Claude attempts to practice with Nina, she reminds him that he is banned from using magic on school premises. The adventurers have already devised a plan to showcase their strength to the students, setting the stage for an impressive demonstration. Claude continues conducting mock battles with the students, deliberately placing Kane at the end of a very long line. Just as Kane and Claude are about to face off, the school bell rings. The instructor announces that the lesson is over. Claude suggests they'll battle next time, but the instructor reveals there won't be a next time. The school has exhausted most of its budget repairing damages caused by Kane. Claude realizes he has miscalculated the time allocation. Kane is furious that he didn't get to demonstrate his strength. That night, Kane ventures into the monster's forest to vent his frustration. He systematically slays every monster he encounters until his anger dissipates. After wiping the sweat from his face, he leaves. The knights, observing the forest's destruction, believe the Prince of Darkness is attacking. They assemble and investigate. Kane's father and the knights arrive to find the landscape riddled with massive craters. Kane is subsequently summoned to the palace. The king reports that Margrave has sent a warning about the Prince of Darkness appearing in the monster's forest. While the king considers mobilizing the military, Kane quickly dismisses the idea, suggesting it might be nothing significant. In the monster's forest, Aaron's seals weaken. With only part of his body free, Aaron is compelled to infuse himself inside a black dragon. Excited by his return, he vows to demonstrate his capabilities to the During the next magic class, the instructor announces they will learn summoning magic. She informs Kane that he can participate since they are not practicing attack magic, which delights him. The palace mage, Grat, is invited to teach the students. He explains two types of summoning magic: establishing a bond with a monster through a contract, and summoning a creature from a magic circle to form a contract. Kane realizes this explains his existing contracts with Haku and Jin. The students begin testing magic circle summoning. Grat distributes circle papers, and students start summoning cute animals as pets. One student manages to summon a creature, but it refuses to form a contract due to insufficient magical strength. After everyone else completes their attempt, Kane is the last to try. Grat instructs Kane that he can pour as much magical energy into the circle as he wants. If the summoned creature cannot form a contract, it will simply leave. Kane begins and channels an enormous amount of magical energy into the summoning circle. After Kane completes the summoning spell, a man appears before them. He introduces himself as the Prince of Darkness, questioning why a human has summoned him. As he approaches Kane, and Kane prepares to attack, the Prince of Darkness suddenly falls to his knees, begging for forgiveness. He offers to form a contract with Kane immediately, pledging the full might of the demon clan at Kane's disposal. Kane quickly clarifies he has no interest in taking over any nation. The Prince of Darkness reveals his name is Seth. He is eager to form a contract that would allow Kane to summon him at will. Kane forms the contract, and Seth departs. Kane then lies to the students and instructors, claiming he didn't form a contract and that Seth is gone. Shortly after, the king summons Kane to the palace. Grat has already informed the king about the summoning incident. Kane honestly explains that he summoned a demon who turned out to be the Prince of Darkness. The king is shocked to learn Kane has formed a contract with the Prince of Darkness. Grat emphasizes that summoning a demon is one thing, but the Prince of Darkness is on an entirely different level. The king attributes Kane's magical prowess to his training with Yuya. To ensure absolute secrecy, the king warns Grat that revealing this information will result in execution. This threat seems more designed to intimidate Grat into silence about Kane's extraordinary abilities. The king asks Kane to display his status. When Kane opens it, everyone in the room is stunned. Kane's status is deemed immeasurable, and he is now classified as a The king jokes about potentially handing over the entire kingdom given Kane's extraordinary capabilities. Grat falls to his knees, attempting to worship Kane, but Kane immediately stops him. He insists on being treated like a normal person. The king decides to promote Kane to the rank of Viscount and grant him his own town near the royal capital. This is intended to be a training ground for Kane to learn state affairs. The king also hints that if Kane proves successful, an engagement announcement will follow. Returning home, Kane informs Sylvie about the proposed promotion. She congratulates him enthusiastically. Moments later, the butler enters with an urgent message from Garm, relayed by Jin in Gracia. There are reports of increased monster activity in the Forest of Monsters. The monsters have become savage and are attacking indiscriminately. Kane visits his brother Jin, who explains the situation in detail. The adventurers have reported a significant rise in monster numbers, and the authorities are trying to keep the situation quiet to prevent public panic. They cannot deploy knights or soldiers without risking widespread fear. Kane volunteers to investigate. Initially, Jin tries to dissuade him, but when Kane reveals his A-rank adventurer status, Jin agrees. Kane mentions he will first visit the town's guild before heading into the forest. Kane arrives at the guild to formally register his quest to investigate the forest of monsters. Nina and Millie coincidentally appear at the same time. Kane mentions this is his hometown, and the girls reveal that the guild has dispatched high-ranked adventurers to the area. They report that they've already scouted the forest and confirmed an unusually large monster population. Due to the sheer number of monsters, Millie and Nina were unable to penetrate deeper into the forest. When Kane expresses his intention to investigate, they caution that he might need help despite his strength. Kane confidently assures them he has a plan. Upon entering the forest, Kane summons Haku and Jin for support. As he eliminates monsters, he senses someone watching him. With each monster he defeats, he realizes the Watcher is not among them. Kane decides to summon Seth and request his help investigating the forest. Seth agrees there's a presence attracting the monsters. He suggests summoning an associate to assist with the investigation. Seth introduces Dalmatia, a retired former Heavenly King renowned for his investigative skills. Dalmatia is honored to meet the Chosen One and expresses his continued expertise despite retirement. Monsters attempt to attack them, but Kane effortlessly wipes them out. The number of eliminated monsters is so large that he has to stack them in a heap. He instructs Dalmatia and Seth to continue the investigation while he returns to town to deliver the monster corpses. After Kane's departure, Dalmatia tells Seth that Kane is far more powerful than they initially thought. He's convinced Kane would easily defeat them if they were to challenge him. Claude and Nina arrive in town to witness the dangerous monsters Kane has eliminated. They express concern about such monsters potentially reaching the town. Kane warns that even more powerful monsters remain in the forest. Meanwhile, in the forest, Dalmatia and Seth continue their investigation. Dalmatia observes that someone is attempting to intimidate them from venturing deeper. They reach the forest's deepest part and discover monsters gathering. Aaron is instructing them to devour all humans they encounter. Seth immediately leaves to warn Kane about the monster's coordinated movement. Kane briefs Claude and the team, announcing his intention to return to the forest of monsters. Nina warns of the danger, but Kane reassures her that Seth will support him. Seth feels even more motivated to serve Kane after hearing how Kane refers to him. As they prepare to leave, Tijuana arrives. Garm has dispatched the royal chivalry as backup, with Tijuana arriving ahead of her men. She embraces Kane, expressing how much she has missed him. Kane asks Tijuana to protect his home and people while he heads to the forest of monsters. She is delighted to help him. After finalizing preparations, Seth and Kane set out, with Kane choosing to run instead of using flying magic to avoid alarming the townspeople. Moments later, Kane reaches the location of the Black Dragon. Aaron confronts Kane, stating he has been waiting for him. Seth suggests Kane focus on confronting Aaron while he handles the monsters. Kane expresses concern for Seth, who reassures him by promising to summon his underlings for assistance. Meanwhile, Tijuana remains responsible for securing the citizens and fortifying the town's defenses. Nina uses her scan magic to assess the approaching monster horde. She reports a massive number of monsters advancing toward the town. Millie immediately volunteers to stop the monsters' advance. Claude attempts to dissuade her, but Millie argues that even though Kane is strong, he might need help. Consequently, Claude, Nina, Lena, and Millie unanimously decide to enter the forest and intercept the monsters. Seth summons his loyal subjects, revealing they are the 4 Heavenly Kings. The generals are surprised by Seth's unusual request. Seth explains his contract with Kane, which further intrigues them. They are particularly surprised to see Dalmatia present. Dalmatia reveals that Kane is a and the Supreme Being's chosen one. The generals wonder about the extraordinary human who could form a contract with Seth and require such high-level assistance. Seth promises a detailed explanation later, but emphasizes their immediate need to eliminate the monsters. The generals acknowledge they have no choice but to comply. They begin systematically attacking and destroying the monster horde. The Black Dragon attacks Kane, who swiftly counters with his own strike. Aaron expresses frustration about being forced to inhabit a dragon's body due to his incomplete physical form. He reveals himself as the source of the monster's erratic behavior, having initiated a new game aimed at devouring humans using the monster horde. Aaron mockingly challenges Kane, taunting him about how long his friends will survive. The adventurers arrive in the forest to witness mysterious powerful men flying and decimating monsters. Nina recognizes them as Kane's allies. The generals discuss the overwhelming monster numbers, with Seth instructing them to continue eliminating as many as possible. Meanwhile, Claude and his party begin their own assault against the monsters. In the confrontation with Kane, Aaron realizes that Kane's parents were responsible for sealing him previously. He vows to eliminate Kane, but Kane corrects him. Initially planning to make Aaron suffer, Kane is now consumed by anger due to Aaron's mockery of his parents. His sole intention has become completely eliminating Aaron. Aaron attacks Kane, who counters with Inferno magic. The adventurers gain additional motivation when Lena suggests they'll all drink together after the battle. The fight intensifies as Aaron knocks out Haku and attacks Jin. Just as the adventurers are about to be overwhelmed by monsters, Tijuana arrives with backup. She happily reports that the town is now secure and its defenses are strong. Kane's anger escalates when Aaron attacks his companions. Aaron taunts Kane, calling him insignificant compared to the Kane responds that his only concern is protecting his friends and family, dismissing the desires. Activating Emperor-level magic, Cain launches an overwhelming attack on Aaron. He continues to overload the magical assault, ultimately defeating the Black Dragon without fully realizing it. Seth and Dalmatia bring Cain out of his blind rage, informing him that the monsters have retreated and peace has been restored. Cain's friends celebrate his return, and he reflects internally on successfully protecting everyone. Meanwhile, the king is in a state of panic about Cain's use of Emperor-level magic. He explains that citizens witnessed a massive pillar of light, believing it to be the end of the world. The king nearly faints upon learning that Cain also summoned the Prince of Darkness to assist in the battle. As a reward for his hard work and goodwill, the king promotes Cain to Viscount and grants him the town of Dorenthal. During the official ceremony, Cain receives his new title and domain. Tijuana becomes apprehensive about Cain's new role, revealing that numerous nobles have previously been assigned to Dorenthal but quickly fled. Cain realizes he's being strategically positioned in this challenging town. Telestia attempts to protest, but Cain stops her, expressing excitement about transforming the town. Cain declares his intention to build a community where everyone can smile. His family pledges to support him through the challenges of being a Viscount. Upon arriving in Dorenthal, Cain immediately addresses the problematic adventurers. He removes those who harass common people and those disrespectful to the townspeople. Later, Seth appears seeking help, claiming his wife caught him cheating and expelled him from their castle. Lafani, Seth's wife, soon arrives. Cain criticizes Seth for his infidelity, especially given his wife's beauty. Telestia and Silk seize the opportunity to subtly warn Cain about potential consequences if he ever cheats after their marriage. After a brief interaction, Lafan returns home with Seth. Reports soon circulate about Cain's transformative work in Dorenthal. He has constructed a protective wall around the town and built an impressive castle that reportedly surpasses even his father's.